This wasn't your typical boy meets girl kind of story. This was something else entirely. This was a soul summons. The kind of pull that doesn't just tug at your heart, it drags your whole being into the fire. People say you fell in love, but let's be honest, did you really fall? Or were you pulled, dragged by a force so ancient, it bypassed logic, sidestepped reason, and dove headfirst into the part of you that still remembers lifetimes? This wasn't just chemistry, not just butterflies and flirty glances. It was cosmic chaos dressed as intimacy. Carl Jung nailed it when he said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But here's what no one warns you about. Sometimes that transformation feels like demolition. It's not all stardust and poetry. Sometimes it feels like being peeled open, with a truth you never asked to see. Because sometimes what we call love is actually a spiritual initiation in disguise. You didn't just meet a person, you met a portal, a living, breathing invitation to your forgotten self, a key to the rooms you boarded up long ago. That connection, it wasn't about romance, it was about resurrection. You thought it was a relationship, it was shadow work dressed in affection. Your conscious mind didn't orchestrate this, it never could have. It was your soul. It recognized a pattern in someone else's energy, a riddle it needed to solve. Not to complete you, no. To crack you, to rebuild you from the pieces you've been hiding behind performance and politeness. To drag your sleeping self into the light. Because real love, the real kind, doesn't coddle. It confronts. It pokes at your wounds like they owe it answers. It's not here to validate your carefully crafted identity. It's here to dismantle it, to throw you into the fire, so you can finally see what's still flammable. You thought you found the one. Maybe. Or maybe you found the mirror. And what reflected back wasn't them. It was your hunger, your grief, your longing, your shadow blinking in the light for the first time in years. If you've ever met someone who rattled your bones just by looking at you, who pulled feelings out of you that scared you more than they excited you, that wasn't a coincidence. It was synchronicity, Jungian style. It was divine disruption. The moment your soul whispered it's time. So let me say this for the ones who are healing in silence. You didn't just fall in love. You were chosen, summoned to awaken. And now we go deeper. Let's talk about the signs. Because if you've ever felt this kind of connection, you deserve to know the truth. It wasn't ordinary. It was a rite of passage, a psychological unraveling, a sacred mirror daring you to meet your real self for the first time. Chapter 1. They arrive when your shadow is ready. You don't meet them when you're ready in the way people talk about. You meet them when your soul is tired of pretending. When the version of you that's been holding it together starts to crack, and the version you buried starts whispering from below the surface. You don't meet them because you're healed. You meet them because your healing needs a catalyst. Not the polished you, not the Instagram-approved brunch on Sundays you, but the real one. The one that cries at songs for no reason. The one that clings to childhood stories like armor. The one that's been waiting for a safe enough space to finally come out. Jung described the shadow as the parts of us we reject. Not because they're bad, but because we were taught they were unworthy of love. So when someone walks into your life and ignites something deep, so deep it doesn't even have language, it's not random. It's not fate with a soft focus lens. It's your shadow saying, I'm ready to be seen. That connection you can't explain. That unspoken intensity that makes no logical sense. That soul recognition. A part of you sees something ancient in them, and vice versa. And suddenly every moment feels like déjà vu. Every glance becomes an excavation. Every silence carries the weight of forgotten lifetimes. Every laugh, every tear, every uncomfortable pause, they're not just moments, they're messages. This isn't flirtation, this is emotional archaeology. They won't just make you feel butterflies, they'll make you feel the grief you buried in fourth grade. They'll make you remember your first heartbreak like it happened yesterday. They'll awaken questions that don't have answers, only echoes. And that's the catch. The deeper the connection, the louder your shadow screams. They sure want to run. You'll overthink texts. You'll replay conversation. You'll push them away just to see if they'll stay. Not because you're broken, but because your unconscious has never been this close to exposure. They are not your missing piece. They are the sacred trigger, the mirror you weren't ready for until now. And real love, the soul-shaking kind, it's not here to comfort your ego. It's here to ask, are you willing to love the parts of yourself you've been avoiding? So if it hurts, if it's overwhelming, if it feels like home and a hurricane in the same breath, you're not crazy, you're transforming. Because this isn't just a love story, it's a summoning. And your shadow has finally decided, it's time to be seen. Chapter 2. The connection feels strangely familiar. You meet them and the world doesn't explode. It pauses, not out of fear, but recognition. A strange, quiet ache, like something ancient inside you just stirred from a long, long sleep. They don't feel like a stranger. They feel like déjà vu with a heartbeat, like that dream you keep having. The one where someone's reaching for you but their face is always blurred, until now. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, when the universe stops pretending to be random. Moments that don't fit into cause and effect, but somehow still make sense in your bones. It's not that you're just now meeting them. It's more like your soul finally caught up to a truth it always knew. It's in the way they say your name, the way their eyes linger a second too long, not on your appearance but on something deeper. They don't see your outfit, they see your essence. And for once you feel seen, not the curated you, not the trying you, but the you underneath it all, the one that remembers who you were before life made you forget. That's the thing about Jung's archetypes. They aren't just abstract concepts. They're ancient patterns etched into your unconscious. They tug you toward people who carry a symbol, a lesson, a wake-up call. And when that call arrives, it doesn't shout. It whispers, oh, it's you. There's no fanfare, no fireworks, just stillness. And in that stillness, something sighs with relief. Time does this weird thing. Stretches and shrinks. Your ego, it kind of fumbles and gets quiet, because this connection, it's not about performance, it's about presence. You try to tell your friends, you try to explain, but you sound like you've joined a cult of two. Because how do you explain a connection that didn't begin in this lifetime? How do you describe the feeling of remembering someone you've supposedly just met? You don't. You just feel it. In your chest, in your gut, in that weird humming silence that falls between you. This isn't familiarity built from shared hobbies. It's recognition built from soul code. It's the kind of connection that brushes up against your dreams, your traumas, your timelines. You weren't just drawn to them. You were remembering them. Not their job, not their laugh, not their favorite color, but something holy they carried. Something that finally made your buried self feel safe enough to come out. And when that happens, you don't just fall in love, you awaken. Because this wasn't the first time your souls touched. It was just the first time you were conscious enough to notice. Chapter 3. Intense emotional triggers. They say love should feel peaceful, soft, easy, like a warm blanket on a cold day. But let's get real. Sometimes love feels like war, not against the other person, but against your own damn defenses. You meet them, your heart opens, and boom, so does the box of old wounds you thought you buried for good. Not because they're mean, not because they want to hurt you, but because their very existence is a mirror, and that mirror doesn't lie. Jung said deaths. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But soulmates, they don't give you that luxuries. They don't let you escape into distractions or spiritual bypassing. They make you feel, and sometimes that sucks. One kind word from them. You freeze. You doubt. Because deep down, you don't feel worth. One missed text. Your abandonment wounds hijack the entire nervous system. A simple disagreement. Suddenly, you're 5 years old again, trying to win love from someone emotionally unavailable. Why does this happen? Because this isn't surface love. This isn't cute dates and perfectly filtered selfies. This is initiation. This is soul-deep, nerve-exposing, trauma-triggering connection. They aren't poking your pain for fun. They're showing you where it still lives. And here's the twist. It's not them that's hurting you. It's the pain you've been carrying, waiting for someone safe enough to bring it to the surface. They didn't create the wound. They just touched it, and your whole body remembered the history behind it. That's why it's so intense, because their love isn't here to flatter your ego. It's here to expose the places where you've abandoned yourself. Jung called this shadow work, the sacred, messy practice of dragging your rejected parts into the light. And real love, the kind that leaves a mark on your soul, it doesn't run from that mess. It walks right into it and asks, can you love yourself here too? So yeah, love like this might scare you, might exhaust you, might make you want to slam the door and scream too much. But that's the doorway. That's the test. Because once you walk through it, you don't just love them more clearly. You start to love you more honestly. The person who triggers you the most might just be the one your soul trusted enough to unlock you, to help you reclaim the parts you left behind. Not for their sake, for yours. Chapter 4. Synchronicity surrounds your meeting. It wasn't in the plans. You weren't supposed to be there that day. You nearly bailed. They nearly did too. And yet there it was. A glance, a pause, a current that neither of you could explain. Some call it coincidence. Others call it fate. But if you've ever studied Jung, you know there's a third option, synchronicity. It's when the universe stops being subtle, when two moments, completely unrelated on the surface, crash into each other like they'd been rehearsing it for lifetimes. Not random, not luck, timed, orchestrated, deeply, eerily meaningful. Maybe it was that DM you accidentally sent, or the flight that got delayed, putting you in the same terminal at the exact right moment. Maybe it was that one mutual friend who randomly brought them up in conversation. Whatever it wasn't an accident. It was choreography on a soul level, because long before your hands touched, your energy had already reached out. Long before the hello, your unconscious had already said yes. When the moment finally arrived, it felt like remembering, like catching up. Jung believed the unconscious is always working, behind the curtain, adjusting the lights, setting the stage, not for your comfort, but for your evolution. And when your soul is ready to level up, it calls in someone who vibrates at that precise frequency, not necessarily to love you gently, but to stir something you've ignored, to rattle the version of you that's coasting, to awaken the version of you that's hiding. That's why you look back on your meeting and feel chills. It didn't make logical sense, but everything in your body whispered, "This is it." And that's the trick. Soul-deep connections don't follow your schedule. They blow it up. They arrive when your mind is distracted, your heart is guarded, your life is busy. Because your soul doesn't care about convenience. It cares about alignment. So next time you say, "Funny how we met," pause. Look closer. That meeting may have been the exact moment your destiny cracked open, and your shadow finally met its invitation to heal. Chapter 5. They challenge your false self. Let's be honest, we all wear masks. Not to deceive, but to survive. You became the strong one, or the fixer, or the chill one, because somewhere along the line, you learned it wasn't always safe to be the real you. Jung called this mask the persona, the version of ourselves we put on to be accepted, to be loved, to belong. But beneath that mask, that's where the real story begins. And then they show up, not impressed by your resume of coping mechanisms, not fooled by your carefully constructed personality. They look right through the performance and say, "I see you." And that's terrifying. Because being seen without the mask doesn't feel romantic. It feels raw, like standing emotionally naked, while someone holds up a mirror and doesn't flinch. They don't ask you to change. They don't criticize. They just don't participate in your illusion. And in that space, your persona starts to crack. You feel it. Your habits, your scripts, your go-to reactions suddenly feel clumsy. You hear yourself say things that sound like someone else, because now you're waking up to how much of you was a performance. But here's the sacred part. They're not there to destroy you. They're there to peel back the layers you outgrew a long time ago. They don't love your mask. They love your marrow, the soul underneath the armor, the truth beneath the persona. And yeah, it's scary. Yeah, you'll want to run. But when someone sees the you that you've forgotten and stays, that's not just love. That's resurrection. True love doesn't just validate who you pretend to be. It liberates who you actually are. And when that happens, you stop performing. You start remembering. And you finally meet yourself without the mask. The chapter 6. You see your shadow through them. At first, it's them. Obviously, they're distant. They're inconsistent. They trigger you. They make you feel small, insecure. Not enough. Until one quiet evening, you pause. You wonder, wait, is this really about them? Or am I staring into a mirror I don't want to acknowledge? Jung warned us. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And nowhere is that more brutal or more beautiful than in love. Because soulmates, they don't just show you your light. They drag your shadow into the spotlight. They reflect your doubt, your control issues, your avoidant patterns, and your people-pleasing tendencies. All of it, every part of you that's been shoved into the basement, shows up wearing their face. You think they're emotionally unavailable, but maybe it's your own fear of intimacy, projected. Maybe it's your belief that love has to be earned, not given. Jung called this projection, the psychological defense mechanism where we cast what we won't accept in ourselves onto others. And the deeper the bond, the more intense the projection. You'll swear it's about them. You'll try to fix, to please, to distance, to demand. But eventually, if you're willing, you'll catch the truth. They aren't doing this to you. They're revealing what's already inside you. And that's the plot twist. The person who triggers you the most might be the one who's unknowingly helping you retrieve your missing pieces. Because when you stop blaming, you start healing. You stop asking, why don't they love me right? And start asking, where am I still not loving myself? That's the sacred wound. That's the gold hidden in the pain. They came not to complete you, but to reflect the places within that are still fractured. They showed you your ache, your longing, your patterns, and in doing so, they handed you the mirror most people spend a lifetime avoiding. That's not cruelty, that's transformation, because love that shakes you to your core, love that triggers you into awakening, that's the kind of love that doesn't just change your life, it changes yourself. Chapter 7. They disrupt your life's flow. They didn't walk in softly. They didn't wait politely at the door of your predictable life. No, they stormed in. Unannounced, unapologetic, unshakably real. It was like a spiritual earthquake. One day, everything made sense, your goals, your routine, your plans. And then, they showed up, and suddenly nothing did. Old friendships started feeling hollow. The things that used to excite you lost their flavor. You looked at your life and thought, why does this all feel wrong now? And inside you, a quiet rebellion had begun. It wasn't loud, but it was relentless. Let's be honest, it didn't feel like magic at first. It felt like everything breaking. But Carl Jung would have told you, that's not the end. That's the beginning. Because before transformation, there is disruption, always. This wasn't just a relationship. This was a ritual, an initiation your soul signed up for long before your mind caught up. They weren't sent to hold your hand and co-sign your comfort zone. They were sent to light a match in the parts of your life that were built on autopilot. To break the illusions you confused with identity, to unravel the safe story that no longer fit. This is what Jung called individuation, the messy, sacred undoing of your ego, so the true you can emerge. So when they came into your life and your foundation started to crack, that wasn't a red flag, that was divine demolition. Your inner world turned into a battlefield, not because they were the enemy, but because your old self was being asked to step aside. The friendships that faded, the habits that felt lifeless, the emotions that came out of nowhere. It was all part of the collapse, not to destroy you, to free you, because the universe rarely whispers when it can shake you awake. This love didn't fit into your life. It dismantled your life to make space for something real. And in the rubble of your confusion, you found something priceless, clarity that couldn't have come any other way. So no, they didn't ruin you. They redefined you. And if your world feels like it's falling apart, good. Because that means something deeper is finally coming together. Chapter 8. They don't complete you, they reveal your wholeness. Let's cut through the fantasy. This isn't Hollywood. This isn't you complete me with swelling music in the background. This is real, and it's so much better than a movie. They didn't show up to fix your brokenness. Because let's be honest, you were never broken. You were conditioned. You were hurt. You were silenced. But you were never incomplete. The world taught you to seek, to chase a better half, to believe love meant being saved. But Jung, he shattered that myth when he said wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration. They didn't come to fill you. They came to reflect you, the you buried beneath politeness and productivity, the you who forgot how powerful you already were. They didn't offer you a pedestal. They offered you a mirror. And that mirror didn't just show you the parts you liked. It showed you the truth. The messy, brilliant, unfiltered wholeness you've always carried. They didn't come to rescue you from your pain. They came to remind you of the healer you've always been. That's why it felt so intense, so different, so unforgettable. They didn't love the mask. They loved the marrow. They didn't coddle your wounds. They sat with them, held them, and said, this is part of you too. And that is love, not dependency. Not fantasy, but integration. When someone loves you like this, you don't become less alone. You become more yourself. You start remembering that you're worthy, that you're powerful, that nothing in you needs fixing, just reclaiming. They don't make you whole. They remind you that you always were, before the heartbreak, before the roles, before you forgot your own magic. So if they made you feel more seen than saved, that wasn't a mistake. That was the point. Because love that heals doesn't rescue you. It recognizes you. And when someone looks at your soul and says, I see all of you and I still choose you, you don't just fall in love, you rise in it. Chapter 9. The relationship feels divine yet impossible. There's that feeling, the kind you can't name. From the very beginning, it didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt written, cosmic, like your soul had highlighted this moment in the margins of some celestial notebook long before you were ever born. You didn't fall in love with them, you recognized them. In their voice, in their energy, in that inexplicable stillness that washed over you the moment they smiled. It was like your soul exhaled for the first time in years. But then came the friction, the ache, the very human heartbreak of divine timing gone rogue. Maybe they were in another relationship. Maybe you lived oceans apart. Maybe one of you was still healing, still running, still afraid. And suddenly this thing, this sacred soul-aligned connection, started to feel like a cruel joke from the universe. How could something that felt so right be so impossible? Jung had a word for this, the tension of opposite, that sacred maddening friction between two poles, the known and the unknown, the ego and the soul, the desire to stay safe and the ache to evolve. And when someone touches your unconscious this deeply, you don't get peace, you get alchemy. And alchemy, oh, it's anything but gentle. It's fire. It's disintegration. It's the death of who you were just so who you're becoming has room to breathe. That's why you crave them and fear them. Why you feel like you could live inside their eyes and yet feel triggered by their presence. Why walking away seems like the only sane option. Until you do, and it feels like you've lost a limb. This isn't confusion. This is transformation. This is your unconscious cracking through your conscious comfort zone and whispering, wake up. You're not just navigating a relationship. You're standing at the fault line between who you were and who you're becoming. And no, it's not easy. It was never supposed to be. Real transformation, it doesn't arrive with a checklist and a guarantee. It arrives in contradictions, love and loss, clarity and chaos, longing and fear, all dancing in the same breath. Because that ache in your chest, that longing that won't leave, it's not dysfunction, it's design. It's your soul stretching, breaking, reaching beyond what your ego can handle. Jung said the tension of opposites must be held, not solved. That your longing, your fear, your overwhelm, it's not a mistake, it's fuse. So if this love feels divine and impossible in the same breath, maybe that's exactly what it was meant to be. Not the fairy tale, but the furnace. And what emerges from that fire isn't just a new relationship, it's a new Eros. Chapter 10. The love leads you back to yourself. Not every story ends the way we wanted. Some souls leave. Some hearts stay only long enough to teach you how to feel again. And some love, no matter how sacred, was never meant to stay. And that's not failure. That's purpose. Because this was never just about them. It was about you. It was about the version of you they awakened. The one who now refuses to settle. The one who now knows what soul recognition feels like. The one who can't go back to sleep, whether they're still here or long gone. You are not the same. And that's the point. They didn't just touch your heart, they cracked it open. They didn't just love you, they made you face every place inside you that didn't yet love itself. This isn't a breakup story. It's a breakthrough. Carl Jung called it individuation, the return to the self, not the polished performative self, but the one that existed before you got broken, before the world told you who to be. And love, this love, it was the key. It reminded you of your fears, your gifts, your ache, your light. It made you weep in ways you didn't know possible. It made you dream again. It made you feel again. They didn't complete you. They didn't save you. But they showed you the door back home. To the parts of you you abandoned. To the truths you were too afraid to speak. To the soul you buried beneath being fine. So no, this wasn't a waste. This wasn't just a phase. This was sacred remembering. And even if they're gone now, even if it hurts like hell sometimes, that ache is sacred too, because it means something real happened. They were the mirror. You were the truth waiting to be reflected. And through them you reclaimed yourself, your voice, your worth, your depth, your divinity. This wasn't the story you thought you were signing up for, but maybe, just maybe, it's the one your soul needed all along. So don't call it a loss. Don't call it heartbreak. Call it initiation. And now you're standing here, more honest, more awake, more you, not waiting to be saved, not waiting to be chosen, but finally choosing yourself, because the greatest love of your life was never going to be a person. It was always going to be the moment you finally came home to you. We just explored the kind of connection that breaks you to rebuild you. Explore the unconscious with us. Subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.